My son is your children's father, and there's nothing you can do about that. This is the exact quote my former mother-in-law screamed at me in my own driveway back in 2006, while her worthless, meth addict son literally hid behind her. My girls were 3 and 6, and my fiancé had already taken them in the house. What set her off was hearing my kids call him dad, which we hadn't taught them. They had just started doing it because her precious son only saw my girls 4 or 5 times a year. So here I have this garbage human that literally had his mommy fighting his battles, who didn't answer his phone when I called, didn't work or pay child support, and didn't even know our youngest daughter's birthday or how to spell our oldest child's middle name. And then I have this fiancé, this sweet, kind-hearted man who fell in love with me, and my girls, who said to me when he proposed, "Those girls deserve a dad and I want to be it." This guy wanted the job, so why should I be dealing with this fool and his jackass mother anymore? I replied to her, "Nothing I can do about it." Huh? I guess we'll see about that. That was the last time she saw my kids. I never called her son again. And I stopped answering her phone calls. It's amazing how quickly he disappeared when I stopped forcing him to do his job. My fiancé and I married that fall. We filed adoption papers after Christmas. My ex didn't contest it. He didn't show up to court. His mother showed up on my doorstep on Easter, but my husband told her to take a hike. My children are 20 and 17 now. They don't know my ex. In 14 years, they have not seen or heard from him. No phone calls or birthday cards, no social media requests. If he walked by them on the street, he would just be any other guy to them. He's been completely erased from my children's lives. He does not exist to them. He is not their father. So yeah, I guess there was something I could do about it. Mother-in-law ruined the birth of my son 4 days ago. I made this account specifically to come on here to vent about my mother-in-law. I'm still pretty shocked about what happened, and still kind of baby-brained after the birth of my son 4 days ago, so I hope this makes sense. I've never got on with my mother-in-law, and have probably met her about 10 times since I've been with my partner. Mother-in-law has never liked me, and it's obvious. She doesn't speak to me, she ignores me, she leaves me out. If she does speak to me, it's to say something derogatory. She started being a bit nicer when me and my partner found out I was expecting. She was very excited for her first grandchild, and we finally had something she would talk to me about. She asked my partner several times if she could be in when I gave birth. That was a firm no, and I didn't think about it again really until she stormed into the delivery room 4 days ago. I was in active labor by then with the gas and air, and she suddenly appeared out of nowhere. I'm an incredibly shy and anxious person, and I could not bring myself to ask her to leave myself. I just have no balls. I know this is terrible. I presumed my partner would ask her to leave. He didn't. Whenever I had an examination, I said it was time to go. Instead, she left the room insisting my partner went with her so I was alone, and then they would return a bit later. She stayed for hours and I started to feel like I needed to push, but I desperately did not want to push with her in the room. Eventually I just told my partner it was time to ask her to leave, and mother-in-law looked furious. He did though, and she left. Fast forward to an hour later. The baby was not coming out no matter how hard I pushed, and things had started to get panicky in the delivery room. I ended up on my hands and knees in the least dignified position, and then mother-in-law came back into the room. I was freaking mortified. Partner had to get her to leave again. The pushing wasn't working, and we ended up in theater. It ended up being a forceps delivery, which was extremely traumatic, and I've had more stitches than I even feel comfortable with saying. In theater, people kept coming in and saying that mother-in-law was trying to get in. When we came out of theater, more people came and said she was trying to get in to see the baby. I was horrified. My partner didn't think it was as bad as I was making out. I allowed visits the next day, and my mom came first. I made sure of that. And mother-in-law came slightly later because I told her the wrong visiting time so my mom could meet the baby first. I know that's childish, but I felt like after what happened it was the last thing I could do to get my own back. Mother-in-law wasn't happy she wasn't the first to meet the baby. 4 days on, and mother-in-law asks every day to come and see the baby, but I'm absolutely furious at what she did. I'm also trying to establish breastfeeding and I'm anxious and vulnerable and I don't want her around. She keeps telling my partner I'm mean and horrible, keeping her away from the baby. I don't know what to do. I've spoken to my partner about it, but I haven't pushed it about how upset I am about it all because I'm trying to enjoy time with my baby. I feel really let down by him for not sticking up for me more and keeping her out properly. I feel confused about medical staff not keeping her away when I said I didn't want her in there. One of the midwives said to me after the birth that the reason the labor went so badly was probably a lot to do with how stressful I was finding it having mother-in-law in the room when I didn't want her there, and honestly I feel like that's true. TLDR mother-in-law kept appearing when I was in labor, which stressed me out immensely, and I blame her for me having to have forceps because I was too scared to push when she was in the room, and too scared to ask her to leave. Here's an update. Firstly, thank you so much to everyone who commented. I could not believe the kindness and validation. It really overwhelmed me and made me realize just how messed up the birth of my son was. I actually sent the link to my partner the day I wrote the post, and he thought it was just a really similar birth story. I was like, no, I wrote that. He was shocked at the comments, devastated at the realization he'd messed up so badly, and immediately brought it up with his mother. She accused me of being overdramatic, horrible, and removed all the pictures of the baby from her social media. There was a back and forth of arguing between my partner and my mother-in-law for a few days, and father-in-law told me not to expect an apology from her because it's just how she is. Yesterday, she did message me and said sorry for the misunderstanding, and basically turned everything round to her not understanding she wasn't meant to be there. Confused face. I haven't responded, but my partner thinks this is the best I'm going to get, and I should accept it. I don't think it's enough. I haven't responded to her message, and she keeps messaging my partner asking him why I haven't replied. Breastfeeding is going well and I'm enjoying my lovely baby, but I'm pretty depressed at the moment, and a lot of that feeling is to do with the awful birth. I'm not healing correctly and I can still hardly walk. Again, thank you so much for the response to my original post. If anyone has more advice for what I can do or say, I'd appreciate it. In regards to medical staff not intervening, I have made a complaint and am awaiting response. Nucking Futz. My husband and I are both in our early 30s now, but we're high school sweethearts. We met when we were 13, and were best friends for a few years before we started dating. We had a tight-knit group of friends, and hung out as a group all the time. My husband had a traumatic childhood, and was neglected growing up. In high school, we both worked, and would buy his necessities, but so would my own parents. My mom even took him to an optometrist, and got him the glasses he desperately needed. My mother-in-law was always very odd, but as soon as we started dating, her hatred for me became known, and I can honestly say with a clear conscience that even when I was treated badly, I was still respectful and quiet towards her. She's very religious, and twice as a teenager, my husband, obviously at the time my boyfriend, would be hanging out at my house, and when it was time for him to go home I would be invited over for dinner. I would walk into his house to find chairs set up in a circle around the living room, and people from her church would be waiting for us. They would ask why I was taking her son away from her, and how could we be comfortable together, in a life full of sin. It was freaking bonkers, guys. I wish I was making this up. When we turned 18, he moved in with me, and my family, while we attended college, and worked. We moved into our own apartment, and got married a few years later. His entire side of the family refused to come to our wedding because she badmouthed me so badly. His older, and younger sister loved me though, and were in my bridal party. They have always accepted me, and loved me, and agreed with my husband that my mother-in-law was just crazy, and this is how things always were with her. I was pregnant a few months after our wedding, and would get phone calls from his grandmother and aunt saying I was a disgusting human being for taking away their grandson and nephew. I was so stressed all of the time, and would cry to my husband that I was sorry his family felt that way. It truly broke my heart to be so hated. They only hated me because my mother-in-law constantly bad-talked me. They refused to come to our baby shower. My husband put his foot down, called his mother, grandmother, and aunt, and told them if they couldn't accept me, they would get none of us. They said that was fine. They didn't speak to us for 3 years. We ran into my mother-in-law one day while we were out when our daughter was 3 years old, and mother-in-law cried when she saw her, explained she's been going to therapy, and has gotten help. We believed her, and gave her a chance. We allowed her to have supervised visits with our daughter, and had a weekly dinner. A year later, my husband and I adopted 2 sweet little boys, both born drug addicted, and with special needs. A few years into this, through lots of therapy, and developmental appointments, we find out they had fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and our older son was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder as well as oppositional defiance disorder. This past January my husband and I were approached by 2 different people letting us know that my mother-in-law had been talking crap about our children, and she even told them that if I was a better mother, my son wouldn't have any of these diagnoses. I lost it. I broke down. For the first time in 15 years of us being together I confronted her. I told her that I was her daughter-in-law, and the mother of her grandchildren, and no longer would she speak against me or my children ever again. She didn't apologize, but agreed with me. Later that night, my sister-in-law calls me, and says that her mom was running around the house speaking to herself, and throwing things. My husband went over there, and my mother-in-law explained to him that she was a drug addict, and she only spoke badly of me, and her grandchildren because she was both high and drunk. She said she's addicted to Ambien. My husband, and sister-in-laws told her she couldn't be addicted to that. She said she was also high on oxycodone. My husband and sister-in-laws pleaded with her to get mental health help. They knew she was lying about being an addict. The following day, she checked herself into a rehab facility, and had my husband down as her point of contact for the facility. Days later my husband got a phone call that they did a full blood test, and found absolutely nothing in her system. She was embarrassed she got caught lying, and tried to check herself out, but they offered her mental health services. Now, she has a few people from the drug rehab she was in, calling her mom, and always posting on her Facebook wall about how she's the greatest mom they ever had. I got a Facebook message from one of them a few minutes ago. They asked me why I took her children away from her. Upside down face. If you made it this far, thanks. She's put me through a lot more and I could honestly write a novel about it. I'm just losing my freaking mind, and needed to vent. I'm sorry if this sounded scrambled or confusing. Am I right for banning my mother-in-law from seeing our children? So I have been with my partner for 3 years. I used to get on with his mother extremely well. Well, I thought I did. She would make passive-aggressive backhanded comments that would make me wonder. But until I became pregnant I didn't know for sure. So 11 months ago, I found out I was pregnant with twins. At 28 with no previous pregnancies, we weren't trying. I have endometriosis. I was told I would have a difficult time ever getting pregnant, so it was a big shock. My partner was not over the moon, and became really horrible towards me. He told me his desire for me to abort, and that I should leave if I decided to keep them. I told him I didn't believe in abortion out of convenience. Things were really tense for a long time. A mutual friend of mine, and his mother knew, and told me it was best to tell his mother what was going on. Little did I know, she already knew. We meet for lunch where she proceeded to tell me, if you love these children, you'll abort them. You don't have to leave their bodies at the clinic, we can take them home, and bury them to honor them. That because I was 16 weeks along, I would have to go to a special clinic that did late-term abortions, and I would have to lie to get one done. She had rung ahead of time, and booked me in for an appointment. I said this wasn't going to happen. It's my body, my babies, and no one can force me to abort. I'm 28 years old, not 13. She became angry, and said as I had tears in my eyes, no, we won't become emotional over this. She said if I did decide to keep them they would live horrible lives. I should adopt them out as a single person can't raise 2 babies. That if I didn't do that I am to leave town immediately, and break up with her son, and not to put him on the birth certificate as he shouldn't have to pay child support. I was mortified. Holding back tears, I politely said goodbye, and left. I told my partner the next day what happened, and he became irate at his mother. She then turned up without invitation, and started to cry crocodile tears saying how sorry she was, not that she said it, but that I took offense to it. She blamed the fact she was an Aries, and liked things to get done for her actions. I pretended it was okay, and accepted her apology as I felt put on the spot with them both staring at me. The next day she said she wanted to throw me a baby shower as she was so excited. I declined politely. Fast forward a few months, I was 28 weeks, and went into early labor from preeclampsia caused partly by the stress I was under. I gave birth in a rural hospital. They barely made it. One had to be resuscitated, and then they were flown 7 hours away to an intensive care unit. She turned up uninvited to the hospital before they were taken, and made the nasty comment that she didn't think they were her son's children because they had blonde hair. I naturally had blonde hair. I couldn't believe it. We didn't know if they would survive the night, and here she was making crap comments like that. Not that she should have been there anyway. None of my family were at the hospital. She tried to make my partner leave me at the hospital alone without my babies. Traumatized and scared, I ended up discharging myself, and almost died because of it. 5 days later, I was hospitalized for hypertensive crisis, and I was fighting for my life. She started texting my partner nasty little comments about me, trying to break us apart, all while I was barely conscious. Weeks later she asked if she was welcome to come visit them. I said no. We finally got them home after 139 days, and since being here she's made my life hell. We live in a small town where she grew up, and my friends and family are over 400 km away. She's been telling everyone that I'm being irrational, and banned her from seeing them for absolutely no reason. She won't tell people what she said, just that I won't allow her over. It's a small town, everyone knows everything, and I'm coming off like a real villain. I'm trying to get into routine, and start to process the horror of what happened, and relax a little bit, but she's making things really difficult. She told people that I'm stunting their growth, and developmentally hurting them by not allowing her to look after them, and come over whenever she wants. I don't allow anyone to look after them. They are my responsibility. I almost lost them over 5 times during their NICU stay, so I just want a few months to settle in, and enjoy my babies. Am I being unreasonable? Sorry for the novel BTW, embarrassed smiley face. She makes my partner feel bad by saying she's upset and crying all the time over this situation. She doesn't seem to care. She made me upset and cry all the time during my pregnancy, which contributed to the preterm birth. Then, after when it was touch and go for all three of us, she continued to be a right brat. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.